Here before. Joseph Molina Flynn, thanks for coming in today.
Kate?
I appreciate your taking the time in your busy schedule. Attorney, head of the president of the Rhode Island Latino PAC, which is why we had you the first time around on the politics side of things. But this is a kind of a balance of politics and what's going on in DC and balancing your workload as a lawyer. All eyes are on DC right now with immigration reform. Just the other day, we saw Trump sit down with congressional leaders, say, I'll sign whatever you put in front of me. Just today, he comes out and says, nope, go back to the drawing board. You're a working lawyer. You've got clients. You're in court. But how much of paying attention to D.C. takes up your day at this point with just all eyes right now on what's going on down there?
I think all immigration lawyers will tell you that it actually takes up so much of our day because that drives the call volume that we receive. It drives the questions that our clients are asking us. And I've only been practicing for about 3 years now, but with the previous administration, there was at least a little bit more control in the flow of information. This time around, it's been quite hectic. This week particularly has been kind of a roller coaster ride. There's good news on the DACA front, maybe. There's bad news on the TPS side, which we'll talk about in a little bit what those things all mean. And then there was the raid the raids of the 7-Eleven stores, which are horrible news for immigration practitioners because they scare our clients. So it's been a little bit of a wild ride over the last week.
Let's talk about the raids of the 7-Eleven stores. The administration, we all go to different places. We know where folks of different ethnicities might work or live or do business. Were you surprised by this, that they kind of targeted sort of I don't want to say stereotypical, but folks know a lot of folks new to the country, work in certain areas, and 7-Eleven's one.
I can't say that I'm surprised because this is exactly what everybody was fearing. Certainly while President Trump was running, he took a very xenophobic stance, and everybody kind of expected that this type of targeted enforcement is exactly what was going to happen. I'm actually kind of surprised that it took this long to start happening. I'm happy for my clients that it took this long, but now they're all panicking because they're wondering what's next. And the thing that gets me is, so they went into about 100 7-Eleven stores. 21 people were apprehended. So you caused this mass panic across the country. You put a lot of resources into going to these 100 stores to apprehend 21 people. There's certainly a better way to do that.
And let's talk a little bit about DACA. They are looking to see that it seems like the program might remain intact. Were you surprised after sort of what transpired leading up to this, or did you have a hope and expectation all along that Congress would be able to make this happen?
So DACA is kind of a funny thing because I think the people who make up the group eligible for DACA are kind of the most sympathetic stories. They're kids, or they're not kids anymore, but they were kids when they came to the United States. They've done all the right things. They've graduated from high school. A lot of them have graduated from college, and they've never been in any sort of criminal trouble. And so a lot of people can sympathize with that group of individuals and recognize that if somebody deserves relief, it's probably that group. That said, we all knew that President Trump was going to take a very hardline stance on anything that was done by the Obama administration by way of an executive order. So we expected DACA to go away. We're certainly very happy that the judge out of California who issued the ruling that DACA renewals have to continue to be accepted while Congress is sort of in flux. And we're hopeful that the resolution that is ultimately passed will give these people some sort of permanent relief. Some of my clients came to this country when they were 1 year old. They know no other home. And to think of them having to go back to Colombia or Guatemala or Ethiopia or wherever it might be, that's a difficult pill to swallow. And so we're certainly very hopeful that, particularly because of the decision that came down this week, that Congress will see that this is something that needs to be done.
And speaking of decisions, I want to now tack to the TPS program, the temporary protection that we saw the president make the announcement today regarding El Salvador. Why now?
Well, all right, so that's a loaded question, and you're good at asking those. But I think the president's stance is that temporary protected status is supposed to be temporary, and El Salvador particularly has been protected by this temporary status since 2001. The issue on the other side of the coin is that now, so this program was implemented for Salvadorians particularly because of a natural disaster, right? And so the administration then agreed these people shouldn't be forced to go back to a country ravaged by disaster. But now they're being forced to maybe go back to a country that's ravaged by gangs and violence and situations that even those of us who have lived through some of that could not imagine having to go back to. They've had the status since 2001. They're expected to go back by September 19th of 2019, or September 9th. And to think of, that's a span of 18 years. For them to go back to El Salvador now, it's rather inhumane, and there should be some way for them to get relief. And I encourage everybody who is affected by this to contact an immigration attorney to see what your options are.
And talk a little bit, again, this TPS program, do you think, I mean, you talk about them being there for so long, you know, is this the best way to approach, again, these extenuating circumstances for different countries, to have folks come here for a short period of time and then be expected to return?
I don't think it is. I think if you're going to allow somebody to remain here for 18 years with status, and they're allowed to work and have driver's licenses and all of those things, this is not a group of undocumented people. This is a group of people who have lived here with proper documentation for the past 18 years. And to now expect them to go back, it's inhumane, and I don't think that's the best way to address it. Maybe if the TPS had been in place for a shorter period of time, you could understand that. But at some point, you have to start looking at the balance of the equities, and the equities certainly, I'm obviously biased, I'm an immigration attorney, but I think they tip in the other direction.
And what have you heard here in Rhode Island about El Salvador and from folks who have been contacting you?
So in Rhode Island, I really haven't heard too much, but I also have an office in Massachusetts, and the community there tends to skew a little bit more Salvadorian than it does here. And people are scared. People want to know what their options are. People want to know if, you know, the information sort of gets leaked little by little to the community, and they want to know if they should be in fear that they're going to be apprehended anytime soon. They don't understand what it means to have this sort of temporary status until September of next year, and then what happens, and then what happens to my kids, and then, you know, the sort of parade of horribles that flows from there is quite striking.
Is this the most, I mean, we saw obviously Trump's travel bans when he was in here. Is this the most tumultuous time during the Trump administration, would you say, as it pertains to immigration?
That's difficult because, I mean, so it does affect 200,000 people, but the effects at least won't be felt completely until September of next year. So I don't think that quite does it. I think when DACA was eliminated, I think that was a very tumultuous time because all of those individuals affected by DACA are savvy, they sort of digest media pretty instantly, and so the phones were ringing off the hook at that moment. And the travel bans were also pretty impactful just because there were people who weren't being allowed to return home. So I don't think the TPS thing quite does it.
I thought just the timing of which, with everything going on right now, with the immigration reform, the timing of everything.
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. On that regard, yes, because it's just a constant roller coaster. You're getting good news on one side, bad news on the other side, and you just can't keep up. And if we are having a hard time keeping up as immigration attorneys and as reporters, good luck to the people at home.
Well, I wanted you to come in here and just give a little bit of the lay of the land where things are. I mean, all eyes are on DC, and things change daily. I mean, can we have any expectations sitting here or what the world's going to look like this time next week?
No. I think to give you a short answer, the answer is no. Everything that has been happening lately with immigration just shows that we have people in power who don't really understand what the implications of the system are, and who are making rash decisions to please a political base without taking into account really the lives that are affected by this. And that's the most disheartening part of all of this, is that there are real human lives at stake.
And speaking of leaders, speaking of elected officials, the other hat that you wear when you're not a lawyer is the president of the Rhode Island Latino PAC. What's been going on in that sense? Are you making phone calls and raising money?
We are, and we're very excited for what this year brings. And if anybody is interested in hearing more about what we're up to, our first meeting of the year is happening January 25th, which is a Thursday at 6:30 p.m. at the United Way, which is at 50 Valley Street here in Providence. And we'll tell you all about what we have planned for this year.
It's a big year, it's election year, but between what's going on in DC and what's going on here, Rhode Island politically, do you have a moment to breathe?
No. Just this moment that I'm sitting here with you.
Just to come in here, and I appreciate, again, getting your perspective as an immigration lawyer with everything taking place right now. I'm sure we'll talk in the coming weeks and months, but Joseph Flynn Molina, I appreciate you coming in today.
Thank you so much.
I switched it around, and I'll let you go, but don't go too far, and don't go anywhere here with the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center, because we'll be back tomorrow. 3 o'clock, Molly O'Brien. I will be up at 4. We always appreciate you tuning in, your feedback, and have a safe night out there, folks. Again, we appreciate your watching. Be sure to tune in to GoLocalProv.com online on our Facebook page. But again, we'll be back here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center tomorrow. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. News Editor Kate Nagel. News Editor Kate Nagel. News Editor Kate Nagel.